Hello, and welcome to Musician Profiles Celebrating Racial Diversity, a monthly video series through the International Conference of Symphony and Opera Musicians, otherwise known as ICSOM. I'm Doug Rosenthal. I'm the Associate Principal Trombonist with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, and today we are joined by Christian Gray, Section Double Bass of the Philadelphia Orchestra. Hello, Christian.
Hello.
I'm so glad we were able to do this. Christian and I were colleagues together in the Kennedy Center Opera House Orchestra for 2 years, 3 years.
I was technically there for 5 seasons.
Oh,
With the pandemic, it flew by, but yeah.
yeah. Let's dive in. Christian, when is the first time you ever heard an orchestra?
All right. So technically, the first time I heard an orchestra in real life was my youth orchestra. I grew up all over the place. So from the ages of like 6 to 12, I lived in Miami, Florida. And my first orchestral experience was in fourth grade in like the all county, all district, whatever you want to call it. This was probably around 2001. Maybe the years are give or take a year or two. Yeah, I remember my class played, and then the middle schoolers played. I was like, oh my God, they're so good. They played Romeo and Juliet. And I remember that piece specifically was the first time I was like, whoa.
And that was Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet?
Yep, Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet. Exactly. Thanks. The rhythm and the drive and then the soaring melodies. For me, it was just like an emotion I had never felt before. So I don't remember exactly what I was thinking, but I remember the feeling still these years later. Yeah.
Wow. And so that was from middle schoolers playing Romeo and
Yeah.
Juliet.
Yeah. So that was the first time I really remember like a guttural feeling listening to live music, really of any genre. Yeah. Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet in fourth grade of like, it changed my world. Oh my God. And then as I got older, I always did youth orchestra and always enjoyed that. But then when my family moved to North Carolina when I was 12 or 13. And in high school, I was studying with the principal bass of the Winston-Salem Symphony. So I would go see him whenever I can, whenever I could. And then in college, I studied in Boston. And like every week, I would see the Boston Symphony because my teacher was principal bass there, Ed Barker. And yeah, just every week, just seeing the examples he would put out was, I don't know, life changing.
So
So
you were bitten by the bug.
I was bitten by the bug. But I brought up the youth orchestra thing because thinking back to it, that was the first moment I could listen to it without it being sort of from a student mindset, right? Once you decide to go into music, it kind of changes a little bit because you're trying to get like an education from listening as opposed to just sitting back and letting it happen, right? I
Right.
mean,
I've heard people talk about this, how in our more formative years, we sometimes have a more authentic relationship with music. And then once we start studying it and obsessing over
yeah,
performing, it can, there are things that can get in the way. Is
yeah,
this what you're getting
yeah.
at here?
So I think during my more like student years, that was definitely my case. Now that I am comfortable, when I go listen to orchestras, it's more like when I was a kid again. I can kind of just sit back and enjoy it. And I think the big difference is, when you're a student, it's like, how does this serve me? And now it doesn't serve me. It's just for my pleasure, and it's great.
So when you were in North Carolina, is that when you began playing music?
So I come up from a very musical family. My dad, who lives in North Carolina still, and all of his siblings, they're all kind of musicians at heart. They can all play the piano, they can all sing. My uncle's a choir director, my aunt plays the organ. My dad actually was a pretty good trombone player. He almost considered going into it, but then decided not to when it was time to go to school. He still has a P bone,
Oh, great.
somewhere.
what,
Yeah.
what what color P-bone?
Blue,
Blue.
extremely
All
blue.
right.
Yeah. So with that, I grew up in church and we would sing like every week. My whole family was belting it out, and I do not sing anymore. Only my wife hears me sing. But yeah, when I was a kid, like the age of like 7 to 9, I would like go sing at churches in Florida. Like my parents would like take me to different churches and I would just like belt it out. So this was
What
before I knew
what
what a bass was. Yeah.
what kind of music were you singing?
Like hymnals and church music. Yeah.
Like traditional church music?
Traditional church music. Yeah.
Okay. You're
Um,
such a level-headed, mild-mannered person. Imagining you belting things out. This is a great opportunity for us to hear if you're
no, I'm
interested.
good. I'm
You're good.
good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I that just kind of faded out over time naturally. I can't even imagine it now. Um, but then I also took piano lessons for about 6 years. From the age of like 6 to 12, I studied piano weekly lessons. And then when I started bass, I started on the violin actually. My parents enrolled me in a magnet school when I lived in Florida. So I started that in third grade, and they had everyone start on the violin. And then in fourth grade, you get to pick a string instrument. So I wish I knew the reasoning. I think it was as simple as like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, but it's like bass. And it was just kind of like an immediate thing. I don't know. I enjoyed it. Um, I felt like I was pretty good at it, and I wanted to be good at it. Was the main thing. Like I cared about how I sounded on this thing, which at the time you're not thinking that, but looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to be a good bass player. Yeah.
And how? What was your age at this time?
I want to. It was fourth grade. So I want to say around 10 or maybe even 9, right? Something like that.
Yeah. I usually people are 9 going on 10 in fourth grade.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I mean, I played the bass starting in fourth grade, and I did youth orchestra, and I did that. We moved to North Carolina when I was a 12 or 13, and that was such a radical change that kind of put me more into music. Where I think when I think about like what inspired me to pursue a career in music, it was more kind of escaping a situation I didn't really like. Like I had a feeling music could give me opportunities to just do better things with my life. Um,
are you comfortable talking about what what changes were so uncomfortable and
Absolutely.
not
Um,
ideal?
yeah. So we moved to more like rural North Carolina, and the high school I was supposed to go to at the time is the early 2000s. I know it's different now, but we visit. My dog doesn't like this. um, we go visit the high school, and there's still like a decent amount of Confederate flags around and stuff. And when we moved in middle school, I was like kind of picked on for my ethnicity, kind of country background stuff. And I'm Honduran, and there weren't a lot of Hispanic people, I guess. And I could put up with it, but I didn't like it, and the idea of just continuing that really pushed me. I guess I was just listening to my heart, and I was like, I should change this trajectory. I don't like where this is going. Like my grades were getting worse in school. Like, I don't know. I could tell this was a bad situation for me. So just from sheer coincidence, the North Carolina School of the Arts is a 20-minute drive from my family's house. So I think, okay, I'll audition there. Why not? It'd be great not to go to this high school. I'll go to this one instead. And going there just like changed my life. You know, that's when I started taking lessons. I got to play in orchestra with college students. It was like, okay, this is everything I realized this is what I wanted all along, you know. But I
Wow.
wouldn't have auditioned there if I wasn't if I didn't want to escape where I was going to go.
Wow. So music was your
It was my way out,
path.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I certainly have heard about the North Carolina School of the Arts for a long time, and I imagine a lot of people watching this have too. Um, I don't. I've never. Um, I've never gotten to understand how how do they delineate high school versus college? How much, how is that all set up, or how was it in your experience when you were there?
So obviously the grades, academics are completely separate. The degrees are completely separate. At the time I was there, orchestra and chamber music and studios are all intersected together. So I was playing in the same orchestra as college students. And that's such an inspiring thing. Like it's something to look up to, right? I was super green my freshman year. I had never taken a lesson before. I didn't know what I was doing really. I was like lucky to get in to an extent. And to see folks who wanted to do this, were passionate about doing this, you know, it's amazing for a young person. And then
Yeah.
obviously with like it is boarding school too, so the dorms are separate, of course.
Wow. So, but you had so much interaction with the college students and
Yeah.
um,
Um, some of my best friends were in college when I was in high school, which is now very fortunate. It was just something to look up to. Like I don't know, I was able to be surrounded by mentors. And then like my teachers there were just so important to me, and they still are. My freshman year there was a woman named Lynn Peters, who's my first ever bass teacher, who really just kind of helped me get out of bad habits where I played more bass guitar in my bedroom. I was kind of moody middle schooler playing guitar in my room all day. And she kind of taught me what upright is as opposed to the bass guitar. Um, and then my sophomore year, a teacher named Paul Sharp arrived, and he like his just dedication to his students was so impactful for me. Saying, go out for this solo competition, try out for this, try out for the summer festival. And I didn't know these things existed before. But the idea of me going out for that, what, why? But you just like push me and to say, no, go do it. And like, I don't know, just having that mentorship in a field I knew nothing about, but just going out and doing it anyway was so important. Yeah.
you had so many amazing aspects of being at the North Carolina School of the Arts. Is there is there one that you can pinpoint as inspiration for you to pursue this professionally?
I wish I could think of one moment that was like, okay, I'm going to play music. But really, by the time it was time to apply to colleges, it was just like, yeah, of course I'm doing this. And I'm very lucky now that I had a support system around that. Like, I honestly have no idea what I would do if I played music. I guess I would figure something out, but I still have no clue. And I never even thought about it. I never once questioned, like, what if I don't go into music? I was going to go anywhere I got in, like I was just going to make it work. I had no idea, like, what financial stability as a musician is or anything. I just knew I wanted to play. And yeah, thinking back, I'm very fortunate that my family was just like, yeah, go for it. you know,
That's great. That's
uh,
great. It's
yeah,
like it's in your bones.
yeah.
There's nothing else.
They knew I cared about it.
Base is it.
They saw my passion for it, and yeah, luckily they supported me in it. And this
Awesome.
makes me think a lot about being a musician can be pretty lonely a lot of the time with actually practicing and the rejection and stuff you feel all the time. But I haven't met many people who are successful without the support of institutions behind them, or at least a mentor. You know, I it's so important, and it mentors and institutions like School of the Arts, Youth Orchestra, like that stuff kind of geared me. I wouldn't be a musician if it weren't for those places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were able to take
And
you from that, shall we say, less than ideal situation
yeah,
that you were brought to and gave
yeah,
you safe haven.
yeah. And I think most people have a place and person to thank for putting them in a musical situation, at least.
Yeah, are there, I mean, you've already listed a few. Are there any other people or institutions that you want to give a shout out to?
Primarily those. I studied for 6 years with the principal bass of the Boston Symphony, Ed Barker, who
Mhm.
is retiring this season. And, I'll give him all the flowers in the world for putting up with me for so long. Yeah. His education for me was vital to get to the level of playing in the Philadelphia Orchestra. Yeah.
It's my understanding that there are a lot of other bass players who feel similarly that he was
Yeah.
pretty pretty monumental pedagogue
Yeah.
for them.
When I think back, my primary thing working on him was my ears, really learning how to listen to music and listen to yourself and figuring, full of technique, of course, and 6 years of scales every lesson. But he helped me to just hear better, as
Mm.
opposed to just practice, practice, practice. Why isn't it better? What's wrong? Why isn't this good? It's actually being able to dissect what we're doing.
Would you say I've heard, at least in the brass world, I've heard people say that the best teachers are those who teach other people how to be their own teachers. It sounds like maybe he was one of those teachers for you.
Absolutely. He's said that
Oh,
exact thing. Like he wants me to
so
be
it's a
my best
universal
teacher.
then. It's not just in brass
Yeah.
world.
So, and I think long term, that's the way to go, right? Like it's not like you finish school and then you're not going to get better anymore.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Or it can feel
yeah.
like that sometimes, but
I know.
it's the
At age 38, there are things finally clicking into place where it was like, oh, that's what my teachers were telling me about 20 years ago. Cool.
Mhm. Yeah. Luckily, when I finally I got a smartphone when I graduated my undergrad. That was my gift. And then I was able to like start recording lessons and stuff on that and videotaping lessons. And I've saved all of them. I've saved every lesson, and I still try to look back from time to time. It's like, oh yeah, why am I not doing that now? Yeah,
Oh wow, that's incredible. So you have a whole
yeah,
library of lessons to
hmm
choose from. That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, you were talking about, we've been talking about your formative years so much. I'm curious if there is a particular concert either back then or anything up until present times, that is there a particular concert that stands out for you?
That I played. You mean?
Oh, that you played, yes.
Yes, yes. So I actually have three in mind. I could share. A very special concert to me was Tanglewood Summer 2016. I want to say 2016 or 2017. My first summer there. Um, I got to be the principal bass for Shostakovich Symphony 14, and it's a very exposed soloistic part because it's a chamber orchestra, and I just learned a lot through that program. I guess I haven't talked about it much, but it's been so important to me. The first time being in a really important kind of principal role for something I care about deeply is, I wanted that concert to go well. Um, I remember being so nervous leading up to it because I love the music so much, and I just felt like I wasn't figuring it out still. And I meditated for like 3 hours straight before the show, and then I was able. For me, that was like one of the best shows I've ever played to this day. Just from finally like figuring myself out, it was an important concert for me, figuring out the kind of mental baggage with performing that I think most people have, the mind game around being a performer. I learned a lot from that experience.
Well, I'm curious, what kind of meditation did you do that afternoon?
Just trying to be quiet.
Oh, so it wasn't a guided meditation. It
No,
was
no, just literally just laying on my back and breathing for 3 hours, just trying to silence all the the
Wow.
inner critic.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Um,
And who was, I meant to ask who was on the podium for that concert.
I think it was Christian Reif,
Okay.
and then the other bass player was Caleb Quillen, who's a great bassist, a big fan of his. He's in Dallas, and yeah, yeah. My other show was actually at our old job, the Kennedy Center, um, the first run of Aida that we did,
Oh, yeah.
and that's special to me mostly just because of the context. It was my first set of performances as a professional. Um, just feeling so accepted into a group of people and like feeling so supported, and it was a very special time for me.
And I remember the cast being particularly strong
Yeah.
for that run of Aida. If I'm not mistaken, you're talking about the fall of 2017. Evan
Yep.
Rogister was conducting.
Yep, that's correct.
Tamara Wilson, was Aida, the role of sang the role of Aida, and wow, she's gone on to do so many things since then. And yeah, that there were others in that cast that were well. I know this isn't an opera podcast, but
It's okay.
I'm still an opera geek, even though I'm in a symphony job
Oh,
now.
me too. I mean, isn't it nice we got to play operas for a little bit, at least?
So lucky. Some of the best music ever written.
Yeah. The hours are hard, but yeah.
Yes, yeah. Pit musicians, opera, ballet, musical theater.
Hmm.
Huge respect for the 3 to 6 hour performances.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And then my third one, it's just a fun story for me personally. It was when I joined the Philadelphia Orchestra. I joined in the summer of 22. And the end of that summer, the beginning of the fall, we went on a 3 week European tour. And the very first show was in Edinburgh. We were doing some sort of concerto or something the first half, and then Beethoven 5 the second half. I was actually rotated off Beethoven 5. And I remember leaving the stage, applause. Okay, I'm done for the night. I pack my bass up, and then I hear, Christian, can you get on stage? Can you get on stage? Guys, something happened to someone's bass, like their bass got busted. And I ran on while Yannick, our music director, was also coming on. So the audience is clapping, he bows. I didn't even make the first note. I didn't even type my bow yet. I ran, just, okay, here we go. Like I got the second, but that's special to me just because hopefully people can relate to this. That was early enough on the job where there was still a good amount of like imposter syndrome. It's like, oh my God, am I really here? And it sounds silly saying it out loud, but I remember thinking like, wow, they trust me. They want me there. You know what I mean? And
I
that just kind
guess
of secured me feeling like a part of this great orchestra. And I don't talk about it with my colleagues, but it's like, oh wow, that was special.
I mean I'm sure they would find it special too.
Yeah,
Um, that you felt excited and
yeah,
welcomed.
yeah. But yeah,
um,
those are,
yeah,
because of the context, those are all important shows for me.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. Um, well, it's been so fun hearing you talk about all these different performances and influences in your life. A question we like to ask is if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be?
I would say wrapped up is just be a little nicer to yourself. When I think of my later student years, primarily like college, I was so hard on myself all the time. And I think that's because I thought my ability as a musician was sort of like defined me as a person, was my character. And now I think I absolutely want to separate them. For the sake of a good career, like everything can't revolve around this one show. Yeah, I think yeah, I was always so upset when something didn't work out. And like most people, things didn't work out the majority of the time with auditioning for places or whatever. I thought that meant I was like not a to an extent like not a good person or something. That sounds so dramatic, right? But I think
These
people
are, I
can relate
mean,
to that.
every
Yeah.
musician has had that thought before, though.
But I think when I started actually separating the two, I got much better.
Hmm.
Um, my philosophy now is I feel like I'm getting better because I can be harder on myself. I can be more of a critic to my playing because I don't take it personal. Ultimately, like that's kind of like an act of self-love, like being like more honest about what you want to fix with your playing, what you want to improve without it like meaning you are this thing.
I've never heard that phrased that way. That it's an act of self-love
Be more honest with myself.
to be more honest, but also there's something about like it's one thing to say like, oh, that note was out of tune versus oh, that note was out of tune and I'm a terrible person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and
I
you're not,
suck. I suck because that note was out of tune.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Like
where it crosses the line.
I'm not
Yeah.
deserving of a good and happy life because this note keeps
Yeah.
being out of tune.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Exactly. So that's been really
hmm.
important for me. And it's ultimately made me a happier person.
um, well, and also before we finish up this interview, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us here in your profile?
Yeah. So I guess this profile is celebrating diversity, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's a fun story where my dad's from the States, but my mom is actually from the indigenous region of Honduras called La Mosquitia. Super rural area, barely no electricity, no running water. The language is called Mosquito. Spanish is the secondary language there. Um, you know, sorry, let me think how to say this.
Take your time.
Um, I would go every summer before college, and as a kid, you kind of take it for granted. It's like, oh, this is what we got to do. I think a lot of maybe first generation immigrant kids think, okay, I have to go do this thing. But as I get older, it means more to have a relationship with that place because of the field we're in now. Like, I don't know, they've the folks down there have never seen a bass, have never seen probably haven't seen a violin. It feels so special to like be in this field coming from a place like that, you know. Um, yeah, whenever I think back to that, I feel more grateful for where I am now.
Do you still go back and visit?
Yeah, I mean, half my family's there. I try to go. It's hard. It gets harder and harder. Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon when I make the time.
Do you speak fluent Mosquito?
I wish. I wish I did. I wish I worked on it more as a kid. Uh, my whole family's trilingual except for me. They can speak English, Spanish, and Mosquito.
Am I saying it right, Mosquito?
You can. That's how you would say it in the language.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Um,
all good. I'm not
what
offended.
how what's is there any linguistic connection between Mosquito and Spanish?
Zero. It's not a Latin language. No one really knows the roots of the society there. It's still unclear how those folks got there.
I don't know if I know the story then. How did your mom and dad meet?
My dad's parents were missionaries. So he grew up in Nicaragua and Honduras, and he eventually was working in Honduras as like a young man. He met my mom there. So my brothers grew up there until their teenage years. And when my mom would come to the States to have us for green card reasons. And then when I was born, when I was about a year and a half, they decided to move full time to the States. So even with that,
Oh,
if they waited a couple more years, I might not be a musician because might have just been a totally different situation. Just the timing of things had to be
Oh,
like
I see.
sort of a perfect storm for me to discover music, I think. Or that's how it
Well,
feels. Yeah,
it was meant to be.
sure.
Wow. Well, Christian, it's been so great reconnecting with you and learning more about you.
You.
Um, yeah, it's we had some good times in DC, and glad we could have this nice little half hour over Zoom here.
Yeah.
But and thank all of you. Thanks to all of you for watching this. This has been another video for ICSOM's musician profiles celebrating racial diversity. Thanks again.